Welcome! In front of me I have the Realme 11 Pro Plus, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So let's just get straight into it. Now I'll mention right off the bat that this phone is priced in semi-mid-range price. I think that's basically what they're going for. So obviously everything that I'll be saying, or every specs that I'll be listing, will be in reference to the price, and also the opinions and what I consider good and bad will be based obviously on the price of this device. So, dare to leap. Dare to get a case with the device. Nice. And get a phone. Then we get a insane 100 watt charger and a charging cable, type C to type A, and that's all. Now let's get into the phone. Now this one has just a glass looking back, or plastic. I think that actually might be plastic, to be completely honest. Yeah, that's a plastic back. Now there is another version of it that comes with a leather back, and just to bring that out, because I believe it's also the option for the cheaper version of this device. I'm just gonna quickly make sure. Yep, it's either leather or plastic, so both of them have the same options. Now to bring the leather option into view, that's basically how it would look like. This is the 10 or 11 Pro, not either 11 Pro Plus. And yeah, it has this leather back. I don't think this is a genuine leather, just keep that in mind. I think it's just like some eco leather, but it still feels nice to the touch, and yeah, it's just kind of nice. While the one that does not have leather has plastic back, which honestly seems like a massive downgrade comparing it to leather or plastic. Just no. Anyway, let's just turn on the device. Come on. There we go. So with that being said, plastic bag, which is a little bit of a shame. We do have aluminum frame, so that actually adds a little bit of rigidity. This plastic is pretty flimsy, as you can probably see. Then we get a massive camera bump right here. So as you can see, this is kind of a unit right here, and it only boasts a 3 camera setup, and to be completely honest, that's not even a triple camera setup, because one of those cameras is a 2 megapixel macro. Now if you know anything about phones and the shitty lenses that they get included with, 2 megapixel macro is absolutely useless, especially when you have a 200 megapixel wide sensor. So with that being said, the 2 megapixel macro is just like a FU from the company. Just here you go. Here's a lens that we'll include. Also gain a little bit more money for it, because we're gonna sell you a little bit more expensive device while basically popping in a lens that is worth like couple cents at best, I would argue. So the 2 megapixel is just hilariously bad. Honestly, you can just take any kind of tape, stack it on it, and you won't see any kind of difference in your photos. And for people that are like, okay, but macros are used for close-up photos to get some like super good detail on objects, right? And the wide sensor is just for capturing normal photos. For that argument, I'm gonna tell you this: 200 megapixels, double zoom. It's basically lossless zoom. Will provide you with a significantly higher quality, higher resolution, fidelity, lighting of a photo that you can then zoom even closer than the 2 megapixel macro. So there you go. You're welcome for this tip. Now at the front we have a 32 megapixel wide sensor, and with the back and front, let's start with the back. You can record at 4K 30 frames, or wait, let me actually switch it back. 4K 30 frames, or 1080p 3060, slow motion 120 to 40, and then the front selfie camera can record at 1080p 30 frames. So nothing really special. Now that being said, I'm just gonna bring back again the cheaper version of it, the 11 Pro only. and give you a comparison, because the difference between these two devices is about $40–50, something along those lines, and there's very little difference between those two. As you can probably see, they look very similar. So let's take off the case. So that's how they look like in comparison. They're, oh, well, intents and purposes, they're, oh, this one turned off. They're basically identical. The back, you can see, even the camera like placements and so on are almost the same. The only difference is the camera bump here, because we have a 200 megapixel lens. The bump is significantly bigger compared to this one, which, as you can see, it's almost non-existent. So the camera, the 200 megapixel, here you get only 100 and then 2 megapixel depth sensor and nothing else. So this is only a 2 camera, well, this one has 3. There we go, we have it on. As you can see, they basically look identical. So yeah, that's one difference. And the other one, charger that comes included with the device, with the Pro Plus, we have 100 watts. With the 11 Pro, you only get 67 now only. This is still insanely fast charger, but it's slower than what you get right here. Now, that being said, I wouldn't recommend charging your device with 100 watts fully. So if you have an option to change it in the settings of the device, I would recommend changing that, because constantly charging your battery or phone's battery at 100 watts will degrade the battery significantly quicker than if you charge it, for instance, at 50 watts. So that is something that you might be interested in checking out. Now, with that being said, that's basically the only difference between these two devices, and the price isn't that much different. So now, continuing with this one, I mentioned the cameras, I didn't mention the display. So let's touch upon this one. So this is a 6.7-inch display, 1080p by 2412. It's an AMOLED display with 1 billion colors, HDR10 Plus certified, 120 Hz refresh rate, and a peak brightness of 950 nits. It also has 90.5% screen to body ratio with 394 pixels per inch. And by all intents and purposes, this display is very good. Now, for the people that don't really speak the display language and have no idea what I just said, to quickly explain a couple of the more important options, AMOLED basically means that the display provides you with like super nice deep black colors, to the point that they are basically, the black color looks like it's not lit up, which is not really the case for more budget devices which have an LCD. And even if you open up a completely black image in a dark room, you will see that the phone still provides some kind of light, even though the display is showing black color. Obviously, AMOLED will not really do that. AMOLED black means that the display isn't providing you any kind of light. Now, that's one thing. Refresh rate means that you're scrolling up and down, the scrolling looks much smoother, rather than it kind of like looking like it's just chopping. Here it's just gonna look a little bit more smooth, which is a good thing. And we have also a relatively bright display at 950 nits. That is a pretty good brightness, especially for the price. This is outstanding, I would say. So with that being said, the display right here, pretty good. Now moving on into the internals, we have a Dimensity 7050 in here, which for the people that don't really know how powerful this is, or in terms of like the Dimensity processors, is equivalent of a Snapdragon 778G, I believe it was. Let me just quickly make sure. Yep, 778G. And again, to kind of explain this for people that just don't speak processor, it's pretty good. It's not the best, but it will deal with whatever you will throw at it with very little problem, and it will only get kind of stumped by just some heavy gaming. So we're talking about like Genshin Impact. That will be probably something that is relatively hard for this processor, especially at like higher settings, graphical fidelity, and higher frame rates. So this processor will most likely not be able to deal with that in any kind of reasonable manner. But in everything else, casual gaming for like more traditional mobile gaming, this should have no problem. And obviously any kind of application you throw at it will work without a problem. Now that being said, there is one exception, I think. I did use a Realme device, and I tried to use a GeForce Now on it. And that for some reason didn't work because of how the MIUI is working. I think it's MIUI or whatever they're using. However, that is working. It's messing up the GeForce Now to the point that you just cannot use it at all. You cannot log into it. So maybe that is resolved right now, but I did have a problem with it. I want to mention it, and that wasn't necessarily that long ago, maybe like half a year ago. So that was a fairly recent problem that I experienced with a Realme device. Now continuing with this one, apart from the processor, at the very lowest end, you can get this device with 256 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is a pretty good starting point. It's by no means low, so I think most of the people will be satisfied with the very lowest end option for this. But if you want, you can spec it up to insanity and get 1 terabyte of built-in storage right here, which is absolutely insane, and 12 gigs of RAM, which again adds a little bit of an overkill for Dimensity 750, I would argue. But that being said, there are people that will most certainly want 1 terabyte of storage in their device. You can at that point use the device as a just kind of like a NAS almost, where you can keep a lot of your computer data as a backup on your device and move it around with you in your pocket. So that is obviously a dream for some people, to have almost everything that they can backed up to their device and on the go wherever they go. So you could do that with this device. Now, continuing down, we have a 5000 milliamp hour battery, 100 watts charger, which will charge this device in probably like 15 minutes to 100%, I would argue. I would presume maybe 20, let's be generous, let's give it 20. 100 watts, 5000, I would probably guess about 20 minutes to go from 0 to 100, which is absolutely an overkill. But for people that want that, you have it. I would, like I mentioned before, recommend trying to tone down the charging speed right here if you have an option. If there is nothing in the settings, just use a crappy cable that won't provide you with this super VOOC charging. Just get a crappy USB-C cable, and at that point the cable won't be able to give this stupid amount of juice into the device, therefore charging it at a much slower rate and also preserving your battery on top of that. So that is a solution. Moving on, we have under display fingerprint sensor. We don't have any kind of headphone jack, which for some people will be a bummer, especially at this price range. This is a mid-range device, I would argue, for the price, and decent amount of mid-range devices still come with a headphone jack. This one does not. Also, another thing that it does not come with is expandable storage. So if you want to use your SD card, you will not be able to do this right here. This is just a dual SIM tray and that's it. So if you need more than 256 gigs of storage that this phone comes at the lowest end, then you will just need to fork out more money right at the front. So there we go. That's basically all the worth mentioning specs of this device, and by all means this device actually seems to be pretty nice. The price is very competitive at $300 US or 29,500 rupees. That is a, I would argue, very competitive price that provides you with decent device along with some other things like case, a 100-watt charger, cable obviously. Now I will need to start adding that the device comes with a cable, because apparently, what is it, Motorola's or Nokia's, one of those two, I think it was Nokia that I did, didn't even come with a cable now. So yeah, not only do you not get a charger now, apparently cable is also a e-waste nowadays as well. If it wasn't made out into absolute garbage that it breaks after half a year, maybe it wouldn't be an e-waste. But the more you know. Anyway, last thing that I'm going to do right here is just kind of go over the positive and negatives of this device, and just to give people a little bit of a bit of like what's good and bad about the device. So starting off, the best part of it, in my opinion, will be the display right here. It's a AMOLED display, so you get these nice black levels and very vibrant colors. It gets pretty bright, it has high refresh rate, so that is all positives of the device. And obviously, it's one of the better kind of displays that you can get on a phone. Now, moving on, the phone itself at a lowest end comes already with pretty good specs, having 256 gigs of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's pretty nice as a starting point. The inclusion of a charger, that's again another W for this device. A lot of the devices nowadays don't even come with a charger. Here, not only do you get one, you get a insanely fast one. So thumbs up for that one. And another thing that I personally like will kind of be still with a display, but the design more like, which is the fact that this device comes with a curved display. I do personally like it. I'm mentioning this as a pro because that's kind of what I like. Not everyone likes curved displays. If you're obviously that kind of person, then just move that pro into a con, I guess. And also you have under display fingerprint sensor. I also personally like that more than a side mounted fingerprint sensor, because you will just start off by automatically tapping the finger, unlocking the display, and being already in position to continuously use the display like you would normally do, instead of going like this and then shifting your position. I do like under display fingerprint sensor, and that's kind of why I'm counting this as a pro. Now moving into the cons will be the build. The plastic bag in this version, that's a little bit of a L right here. I don't like displays that, or devices that have plastic bags. It just seems cheap, and glass doesn't really cost that much more. So I would personally prefer to have a glass bag, which will add a little bit more of a premium feel to this device, especially when the leather bag feels significantly better over the plastic one. And this device has both options, plastic or leather, so you can see the difference between those. If you hold them in the hand, the leather one feels significantly better in the hand. It just adds this more premium feel. Obviously, the color right here might not be everybody's cup of tea, and in this case you probably would be going with the plastic one, which I guess is the only option, because I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think this device comes in different leather colors. So it's either this creamy looking one or black plastic. So therefore, it's a little bit of a downside of the black, or this kind of build quality right here being just plasticky. And another one that I would consider a con would be the camera right here. Not the main one, obviously, the additional ones, the 2 megapixel macro. It's laughably bad, shouldn't be included in a device like this one. It's literally useless. There is no redeeming quality for this camera to be included here when you have a 200 megapixel wide sensor that will perform significantly better than the 2 megapixel macro. And like I mentioned, we do get to pay for this camera, we just don't get to enjoy it. And that's about it. There's not very many cons about this device. It is a relatively cheap device compared to some other phones, as an example. And for the price that you get to pay, you get a really good package right here. So this phone should be fairly enjoyable to use. It should have no problem dealing with almost anything that you throw at it. And it's a pretty nice device. Now with that being said, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.